This is also the start of a new season of the zodiac. We are in the time of Cancer. Cancer is a water sign. Just because it's hot and it's summer, a lot of us may find ourselves wanting to swim or jump in a lake or, spend time by oceans and rivers. And so the relationship, and that is another very strong Cancerian water element correspondence or archetype, right? It is how we are nourished. Cancer season and water element is certainly very related to the earth mother, to nature, to, flowers blossoming and abundance. It could also be our relationship to our biological mothers or people in our lives where we receive maternal love and energy. The other aspect, as I mentioned, is relationships and connection, right? And so, as I mentioned, it's been feeling a little wild for me and a lot of people that I know, because it feels like suddenly I'm very aware of what is oppositional in my life. Now, for you, this could feel, kind of practical or everyday, like you really want to rest. You really want to relax and spend time in the forest, just have a little relaxation time, but you're really busy, right? Like the material reality of your life is that you have commitments, you have things to do, and everything's sort of piling up. On the flip side, it could feel like maybe you want to do a lot of things. You want to go take, start that next chapter, finish that project, make your travel plans, do some things, but there's a feeling of stuckness, or you're sick, or you're just stagnant and you sort of can't move. And so this is sort of that funny dynamic of polarity where our feelings are maybe telling us one thing and our drive, our action, our spirit is sort of pulling us in the complete opposite direction. Through the lens of astrology, or in the language of astrology, this is currently expressed as the Cancer and Aries dynamic. So as I mentioned, the sun is in Cancer. This weekend, the moon is actually in Aries. And Aries is our fire. It's our warrior. It's our propulsion, our spirit, our desires, our action. And so as you can maybe get a sense, it's like that dynamic of fire and earth, fire and water that is so polarized. And if you are someone who uses astrology as a lens of understanding, some of the interesting transits to look at is the Mars in Cancer, along with the sun and along with Jupiter, which also just shifted into Cancer this month, and the Aries planets, which are the moon, Saturn, and Neptune. Right? And each of these have a relationship with each other. And if you are interested in astrology, if you look at things like your everyday thoughts, Mercury, and your dreams, Neptune, your everything that Jupiter is associated with, right? Your sense of spirit, generosity, expansion, where you feel easeful, lucky, or maybe obsessive in your life. And then see where the Saturn parts of you might be, right? Like this could be our health, our sense of discipline, our sense of motivation, and as well this dynamic through this weekend, through the solstice with the sun and the moon. And these are transits with Cancer, the element of water, the resting, the nest, the emotional body, and Aries, our action, our spirit, our propulsion. And if you are not interested in astrology, and you might still be feeling these feelings, but your framework of understanding may not include what the momentum of the planets, and that's absolutely fine. So whether you are or are not interested in astrology, I'll share a little bit of how I'm navigating this. So I navigate this by sitting in ceremony. And ceremony is the theme that we are exploring through these next few weeks of Cancer season. And I'll tell you why. You may have some thoughts or associations with what ceremony is. These days, we have a more, perhaps commercialized understanding of ceremony, like a birthday party or something like that. But across every culture, there have always been ceremonies conducted for different purposes, right? Common ones would be around marriages, births, deaths. There were often, in many, many cultures, coming of age ceremonies or ceremonies to honor grief or sickness or loss, ceremonies to celebrate harvest or good fortune. And more commonly, especially now in my city, there's a lot of women's ceremonies around lunar cycles or their menstrual cycles, right? So ceremonies have a lot of different purposes, and these are often group ceremonies that you would go and it's conducted, and these are absolutely brilliant. So if you've never been to one, this may be a really good season to see if to try and see if you feel nourished in a different way than you thought possible. What we are going to talk about through these weeks of Connect the Dots in the season of Cancer is the place of ceremonies, like the rising importance of ceremonies in our lives. And I'll share personal stories as well. I know ceremonies are really important to me because it is a place that I draw strength from. It requires, so when I'm talking about ceremonies, I'm speaking about more personal ones, but certainly group ones have a more expanded feeling. In personal ceremonies, it is my job to choose a time, a moment, and a place, and craft the container that helps me get really right and centered with where I am, right? If my thoughts are over there and my memories are over there and my energy is like really erratic, and there's stuff happening in the world and I am chaotic, which is, often a place that I find myself. Ceremony is a place that I can draw all parts of myself back in and sit in center or stand or move, right? It is the drawing inward of all of our energy that has poured out into the world and then return to a sense of stability and nourishment. My traditions of where I was taught to sit in ceremony come most commonly from Ojibwe elders, and the Ojibwe are a First Nations here in the part of Ontario, in the part of Canada that I live in. And I remember one of the early times, actually, I had been in ceremonies a lot, in ceremonies conducted by elders. And one of the things I noticed is when they open the ceremony, open the container, they call in the elements, which I understood, but they also call in the directions, the north, the east, the south, the west. They call in above and below. They call in the four winds. And I liked that. It was cool and it was interesting. And I've never really thought about it before, but I was very new in all of this. And at some point, I remember feeling like I didn't really understand why they did it. And so I didn't ask because I felt like it would be disrespectful. But finally, I found a way, and I very gently asked. And I remember the answer I got. It was this elder, he was doing something else. And then he looked at me and he said, "Well, do you never feel lost in life? Now you have a compass." And that was it. And it was one of those funny moments where someone says a few words to you and suddenly it sort of unlocks a doorway within you or something. And so much of my mental anxieties, worries about the future, being trapped in past memories, what could have or should have been, that entire, anxiety, that mental anxiety that so many of us may experience and live with, it all sort of dissipated. Because now I realized that what I was missing was my relationship to directions in my own life and certainly outer directions. And so this may or may not meet you wherever you are today, but in this time, June 2025, with every single thing that you are aware of and unaware of that the world is going through, that is happening in the world as well as your world, my sense is the more and more we have an inner sense of direction in reference to what is happening outside of us, the more resilient and stronger we are. And this is really a huge medicine of Cancer season because, again, it is about drawing in nourishment so that we can sustain our energy levels, our open hearts, our illuminated minds, our love and relationships, our sense of health and wealth and prosperity, illumination and peace throughout the rest of the cycle of this year. So if you're interested, I would love for you to join me in the exploration of how ceremony is rising in each and every one of our lives. And we will do that starting next week. Have a beautiful solstice, and I will see you then.